Shine Campus. Welcome in. I hope everybody's doing good and everybody's having a good Sunday. Um, so today I want to try to talk to you guys about the conversation of communication, which is so common because a lot of times people come to me and say, Thomas, how do we communicate? How can we say this better? And even before that, like our relationship is in a place because we don't communicate, or once we do, it doesn't go well. And so, too often, I think couples are in this place where they don't really know how to do communication. I want to talk to you about why. If you were to look up some of the top reasons that couples get a divorce, and a lot of times it's communication. And I've discussed in videos before, it's like that's not really the the ultimate scenario of why we're not doing well in our relationships. Um, Communication is just kind of the cover for what it is. But we're going to go into communication anyways, and I think by us being able to talk about that, then we're going to start discovering more of what it actually is. And so, what we do know about communication as far as relationship goes, no matter whether it's the ultimate problem or not, is that it's super important. If you cannot communicate in your relationship, there's really no way for you to grow together. There's no way for you to support each other. There's no way for somebody to know your needs. There's no way for you to know somebody else's needs. And part of us developing a stronger connection is being able to communicate. And so, even though it's super hard, us not communicating or us not getting to a place where we're able to communicate with each other actually creates more abandonment and fear and hardship in the relationship than anything else. And so it's an important deal for us to really be able to have communication that's effective. And there are all kinds of ways to communicate. Obviously, like you can have a conversation, but we're communicating something all the time. I mean, you watching this video right now and spending time on learning how to do your relationship better communicates something, right? So there's always a way that you're communicating, and you have to be mindful of that because in your relationship, the idea that you wouldn't try communicates something. The idea that you are working on yourself communicates something. And the more that you realize that you're constantly communicating something, I think that the opportunities for you to get better at it start growing. And so, if we don't do those things, or if we don't realize that, then we're going to have a hard time. Um, there are all kinds of strategies, and you guys can go online and look for different kinds of strategies. I want to give you something that you wouldn't get normally from like a normal Google search, and some depth on the things that I know will absolutely serve you. And so, if we know that barriers in our communication scenarios are happening, what can we do to actually change it? And I think the best place for us to start is to really kind of think about two either rules or just backgrounds on communication, thoughts that I have that I use to be able to help the couples that I work with. One is that communication is actually a higher level of being. So communication is a spiritual um, endeavor. And so, because communication is a spiritual endeavor, a lot of times what you're going to experience is that if I'm not able to communicate well, it's probably because of some kind of internal spiritual warfare going on. And you got to figure out what that is for you. But it's helpful to just have that clue, like, why is it so hard for me to communicate? What makes it to the point where I'm not getting through to my partner so they understand what's going on? What makes it so that I get frustrated easily when something's being said to me? What's going on in those scenarios? And I will tell you, or just like the tip for you to start looking, is that it's some kind of spiritual warfare going on the inside, and it'd be useful for you to be able to sort that out. The second thought that I have about communication that I think is going to be useful for you to know is that um, communication is usually useful or most effective when the other person receives it. So I think we kind of know that, but we don't fully understand that all the time. So it's one thing for you to say, hey, can you help me with this? Right. And those words get communicated, but the other person may not fully understand like what this is, or what kind of help you need. And so they might not completely get the communication. And if they didn't get the communication, you didn't do it well enough. If it didn't move them in the right way, you didn't do it well enough. And I think us thinking of things that way is useful. And there's going to be nuances to that scenario where you're like, man, I can't communicate any better than that. And then you give responsibility away to somebody else. And that's always hard, because I think whenever we're doing that in our relationships and we make our partner responsible for understanding or not understanding our communication, it really kind of creates a gap in our ability to develop a sense of connection together. And so we want to always take responsibility for, did I communicate thoroughly, or did I do the thing that means that the information is received? And so remember that communication is most effective when the other person receives it. And you want to kind of keep that thought inside of your mind. And so what are 3 things that we can really do to change things over? And I know we always want practical scenarios, like, Thomas, give me some steps, right? But the hard thing is that a lot of times it's not a matter of steps that are going to help you. Matter of fact, skills is the least effective scenario for me to give you. It's a way of being, I think, that will really help you. And so here are some things that are going to help develop your way of being. So the first thing that you have to understand is that communication is really a behavior. And so if you zoom out of that, if I'm communicating, that's a behavioral thing, but behavior things come from how I feel, right? And so if I feel a certain way, then I'm going to communicate a certain way. But our feelings come from the way that we are seeing things, the way that we know things, the way that we understand things. So where would we go to if we needed to change how we're communicating, or if we're communicating effectively? Well, you have to change your frame on things. You have to change the way that you see things. You have to change the way that you know things. You have to change the way that you expect things to happen. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, what kind of thoughts do I have that are leading to the feelings about whatever's going on that's causing me to communicate this way? And so that assessment alone will help you to be able to look at that and then start changing some of the thoughts that are going on. And so what would be some thoughts that we would want to go to? Well, the first thing that I think is helpful, and this is our second step, is for us to be able to communicate from where we actually want to be instead of where we are. So often we're so frustrated in this moment, and we start communicating that and interacting with that. And what it shows our partner by accident is that we're less concerned about what they're experiencing and more concerned about what we're experiencing. And it makes that situation ultimately super difficult for our relationship. And it makes it hard for us to come out of that. And so instead of us communicating from like, this is hard for me, and and I'm going to reduce you because it's hard for me, or I'm going to ignore who you are, what your experience is, it'd be more useful for us to communicate from where we actually want to be. What do you want to create in your relationship? And so that's a good thought process for you to be able to switch on. If you could think about, where do I want to be in my relationship? And let me communicate from that standpoint. And so the opposite of us communicating from our frustration would be something like, hey, we're going to be together, and this is something I want us to sort out and be able to work on, right? And so not only in words did you communicate that you're not going to be doomed by the scenario, but also in interaction, the tone and the conversation starts spelling out something that communicates, hey, this is about us sticking together and moving together in this situation. The last thing that I think will help you stepwise is for you to be able to communicate ways that help to develop a sense of connection and security, and a sense that your partner is special to you. So you're accidentally communicating things that are coming from your hurts instead of who your person is. And so again, this comes from our thought process about what we're seeing. And so our person hurts us, and then whenever they hurt us, we start interacting based on that and only seeing that and trying to fix them and verbally shake them to try to get them to do what we want them to do. And we really want to start communicating from a different place. So the place that we want to try to communicate from is like, hey, you're special to me. I want to be connected to you. And somehow I want us to make sure that we're able to resolve what's going on long term. And so as you're communicating the sense of connection that you want, the security that you want, and that that person's special, everything changes. And then you can start building on some of those skills that you can, I mean, find everywhere where, that I think will help you to be more fluid with your communication. But if you have these scenarios in your background and you don't try to say like, but wait about it, what about this situation, or what about if this is happening, and none of that stuff matters. The only thing that matters is for us to be able to look at this communication model and see if we can start putting that in place, and watch it kind of change how you experience your relationship and the communication that goes on in your relationship. All right, you guys, enjoy your Sunday, and we'll talk to you soon.